Hey, Lauren, do you have a preference?
No, I don't mind doing either. I know in the last, we had a webinar on Monday, and a representative from Save Milpitas went through these, but they're pretty straightforward. I don't mind going through them if you'd like me to. But I did have a question, because typically we have a slide for the city of Sunnyvale that just talks about our specific rebates for the residents. I just was wondering if we were going to be able to include that in this as well.
Yes, you should.
Okay. So I'll send that to Janice. Put in. I don't know if you have one, Stephanie, that you have specific rebates that you want to highlight too.
Yeah, the two that are in slide 5 would be the two that we would be promoting as well.
Okay, so I'm able to advance this. I'm the only one able to advance the slides. So I guess I'll have to just advance appropriately, hopefully.
Oh, so as either Lauren and I are talking, you'll just, okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I didn't have any, I didn't see any controls.
Yeah, there'll be co-hosts for it. Or actually, I think I'll give the hosting to Stephanie, and then she can be in charge of all that. So I'll give you the login for Andre's Zoom account, the BAWSCA Zoom account.
Okay.
But I'm still the one that's advancing slides, or will she? Or
you could give it to her if that would be easier for you.
Okay, fine. That would be fine with me. Instead of, I'll take them out of my slide pile then. And
I think it might be easier if Janice has all the slides and just is advancing it, because once we get into your deck, it's kind of easier if you're advancing your own slides, unless we like switch sharing screens, which can be kind of, we had some trouble with that.
Oh, when you switch screens before? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be easier if they're here and then me or Stephanie talk about them and you advance them and then it goes into your presentation. I think that's the smoothest way to do it. But unless we want to have like Stephanie share and then hop off and then Janice.
I mean, I'm easy. You just tell me what you want to do and I'll do it. It's fine.
What do you think, Stephanie?
I think that makes sense. I'm a little nervous to have any issues with sharing screen in between the two slide decks.
One recommendation is just say next if you're not driving the slide.
Yeah.
Right.
So whoever's talking, just tell me next and I'll push the button. Okay.
Great.
Okay. I can go ahead and kick it off. So welcome. We are going to be starting the Secrets to Successful Succulent Gardening today. This class is sponsored by North Coast County Water District in the city of Sunnyvale and the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency. Today's instructor is Janice Moody.
And this is where Stephanie
next.
Oh, next. Okay. So, all right. Excuse me. Okay.
Yeah,
it's only a practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk, then our picture pops up. Is that how that works?
Well, you shouldn't be talking, Marilyn.
Oh, sorry. People are talking and I see that picture popping up.
No, Marilyn, you should mute yourself. You should mute yourself because
okay.
Because we can hear every little cling of your fork on when you're eating too.
So today, while we are participating via Zoom, all attendees will be muted by default. Our instructor will be pausing periodically for questions, and audience questions are encouraged. So please either use the raise hand function or the Q&A and chat or send a message via chat, and we will read these questions throughout the instruction. This webinar is going to be recorded and it will be made available to the public. Next.
I hit it, but it didn't do anything.
Oh, it's just showing the raised hand and the.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay, there. So that wasn't it. yeah, go ahead.
If it makes it easier, if you want me to mention those two icons, I can the next
Yeah,
time.
I think
Okay.
it makes it, people always ask where those are, so I would always.
Oh, okay. So I can tell them if you're on a tablet, they'll be at the top, or if you're on a PC, they'll be in the right column.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're down at the bottom.
Down at the bottom on a PC.
Oh, they'll be at the bottom
like
for
the
PC.
screen. Like
Okay.
the slide.
And I think you have to click on participants to actually see the raised hand. Yeah, I think you have to click on participants to find the raised hand in a PC, on a PC.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
next.
Yes. Okay, a little bit about BAWSCA. BAWSCA represents 26 agencies that include cities, water districts, a water company, and a university that purchase water wholesale from the San Francisco Regional Water System. The BAWSCA member agencies provide water to 1.8 million people and over 40,000 businesses and community organizations in Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. BAWSCA's goal is high quality supply of water at a fair price. Next. Program objectives. Outdoor water use represent the single largest untapped opportunity for water conservation in BAWSCA's service area. Outdoor water use reduction through the use of water efficient plants and innovative techniques can help conserve water and ensure that future water supply needs of our communities are met. Next. So here highlighted are two different rebate opportunities for customers within the BAWSCA regional programs. If you are participating and you are a customer in Pacifica, you would be applying through the North Coast County Water District. The rebate is $4 per square foot here with the Lawn Be Gone program. Would this be a good opportunity to mention those, and then Sunnyvale can say what theirs is, or?
Usually they just kind of go through and say, these are programs that BAWSCA has, and there's a Lawn Be Gone program. You'll need to check with your agency to see if they're participating in the program. And then same thing with the rain barrel. But the one difference of that is anybody in San Mateo can apply for a rain barrel program, even if your water agency is in San Mateo is not participating.
Okay, I like that better. So we'll just wait until the question is asked for our individual.
And then the next slide, you'll see it's talking about a future program, and I forget what else.
You want me to go
smart
next?
Controller.
Yeah, the smart controller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next
And
slide.
then should we say future meaning the next fiscal year?
Yes. There's,
Okay.
I know Nadine's been working on a new program that you'll see in the next slide, and it's mentioned that it'll be in the future.
Okay, so I'll hit next.
So would we put the Sunnyvale specific ones after that, or before or after this, the new program?
Probably after.
Okay,
Yeah,
after
the
that slide,
two
or
host
after?
agencies can advertise their specific programs that they have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after that slide or after this, the new program slide?
I'd say after this.
Okay. The new programs. Okay.
I just don't see where it says future. Am I missing that?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not using the right thing, but it just says additional new programs, new revamped landscape program.
Yes.
It's just that they haven't really put it together.
Okay. So just check with your local water agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or visit BAWSCA.org.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then do you want to go to the next?
Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, upcoming webinars. Please remember to register at bayareaconservation.org if you're interested in any of these topics. There is actually there's two actually on the same date as ours. So are we going to delete those?
There's one prior to our session, so we should actually delete the attracting good bugs one.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
And then I think and then that's us.
Yeah, I
other
think we
one.
should delete
Secrets.
that one.
Delete those two. Delete
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
Yeah.
The top two.
And then we can say, what is the 10th is what, a Saturday?
Wednesday.
Oh, okay. All right.
And yeah, and
So
they
I'll highlight that.
and maybe mention
And
that the previous webinars have been recorded, so they all. You're going to mention. Maybe you should mention that in this slide too. Previous webinars recorded.
Okay. I'm making a note to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll say Wednesday, June 10th and Saturday, the 13th. Please register if you're interested.
Okay, so next slide.
Okay. Okay, and a very good resource available is the Waterwise Gardening in the Bay Area. It's available here at, and you can view a gallery of different gardens, plants that do well in your area, as well as different water needs using the watering guide.
So you faded out a little bit, Stephanie. Is it just because your internet connection's not great there?
Yeah, I'm actually, I'll be in the conference room. It's just that we have a full house today. So
Yeah.
I'm in my office.
Oh, okay. All right, so next slide. Okay, so that's me now. Okay.
Oh, so I guess right after that is when North
bio.
Coast and Sunnyvale should advertise their rebate programs.
Okay, so you'll send me those slides and we'll include it in the deck.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, should I also do your bio for you?
Oh yes, that would be, yeah, the last person to speak can introduce me and then I'll come up with this slide or however you,
Yeah, I'll just read it from the email.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, and so I'll read it right when after Sunnyvale or whatever, once it's on this landing spot.
Yeah.
I could
Okay.
also read it, Stephanie, if you want
Okay.
a break from talking.
Yeah.
Also in the beginning, I think it would be good to be like, we have 3 people kind of on the panel, just so once I start talking, people aren't like, who is this person?
Yes,
Just
I
introduce.
agree.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Oh, so you should introduce yourselves or someone should, each.
Yeah,
so-
just
so
like on the opening slide when we say, and we have the city of Sunnyvale here too with Lauren or something, and I can say hi, and then so that's like, we did that last time. I think that's helpful so people know, because when you talk, your name pops up, but if you're not, or your video, but if you're not talking, you're not on the screen, so people can't see how many panelists there are when they first tune in, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
so some way you should identify the panelists in the beginning. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So normally that introduction will probably take about 5 minutes, I'm guessing, instead of what, because we're 25 minutes into it right now.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm just trying to time it so I don't go overboard, that's all. Okay. All right. So you want to do the blurb, the introduction, or do you?
Yeah,
Lauren, are you going to do it?
sure. Do you want me to do that now or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sent it to both me and Stephanie, right?
Thought I did, or did
Yeah,
I?
it's Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Okay. Excuse me a second. Ah, got it. Okay. Okay. And I would like to introduce our speaker today, Janice Moody. Janice became a UC Master Gardener in 2010 and loves sharing her garden enthusiasm and knowledge with the public. She is the owner and designer of Seascapes Garden Design in Half Moon Bay that specializes in colorful and sustainable water-wise gardens. And she is also the owner of Seascape Succulents Nursery in Half Moon Bay. Her gardens include many succulents, drought-tolerant plants, and California natives. Welcome, and we're excited to hear from you today, Janice.
Thank you. Okay, so let me get started. Sorry for the pause. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today is the definition of a succulent. Some people are a little unsure about that. I'm going to talk about how to propagate succulents, the easiest ways to do that. Pre-planting considerations, what you need to know before you put that plant in the ground. Also designing with succulents, a little bit about designing, and if there's time, care and maintenance tips as well. So let me get started. And by the way, I'm going to be pausing between each segment for questions, so please hold your questions until you see the little Q&A pop up. But in the meantime, you can always be typing a question to our co-hosts, and they will be addressing the questions at the pauses in the presentation. Okay, so what is a succulent? A lot of people seem to be confused about this, and I think it's because they confuse cactus and succulents. And actually, cactus is a succulent, but not all succulents are cacti. So that's an important concept to keep in mind. So basically a succulent is a drought-resistant plant that stores water in its leaves, stems, or roots. And for instance, aloes tend to store a lot of water in their leaves, like an aloe vera plant, and a spiral aloe, as you see it right up here on the screen. You can see the spiral aloe. And then there's also storage in leaves and stems, such as agaves and echeverias and aeoniums, and here's some aeoniums down here. And then we also have plants that store water in their roots, such as this elephant foot palm right here. You know, I'm thinking I'm used to seeing myself on the screen, so this is not the presentation, but if I wanted to see myself on the screen, oh, there you go. Yeah, I got it fixed now, because I think it helps me a little bit. All right, let me now proceed to the next slide. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little video, 13-minute video on how to propagate succulents. And I'm hearing some typing in the background, so someone's not muted.
That's me. It's
oh, you're asking a question probably.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. So to do this, I go up here and I stop the screen share, and then I screen share and go to the video. And here I click share computer sound, and share. Okay. And now I make it full screen, or is it large enough for you guys right now? You're seeing it okay? I'm not hearing anything, but
yes, it's big.
Succulent propagation, because it's such an easy thing to do, even for beginner. It's so successful, you're going to get a lot of reward from it. So I'm going to discuss 3 methods: leaf cuttings, stem cuttings, and by pup or offsets. There's a 4th method of development, but a typical home gardener typically won't grow succulents from seeds, so I'm not going to go into that. That's primarily used for cactus growing solitary growth habits, such as. Okay, yeah. So tell me the problems you're having with it.
It's breaking up.
It's breaking up. Okay. So that's probably my internet then, I'm guessing.
Are you hardwired or are you Wi-Fi?
I'm Wi-Fi, but I could actually drag an Ethernet cord over here and hardwire it. Yeah.
Your when you play the video, it's playing your computer speaker, and your speaker on your earbuds interferes, I'll bet.
Well,
so,
yeah, I'm not supposed to talk at the same time.
Yeah, but but the speaker on your the one hanging down.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know it can interrupt. I remember I did some Googling on this, and it said if my microphone is activated, that it will alter the video, but it won't make it stop and start. It will just interfere with the audio portion. So were you seeing stopping and starting?
Both. Both.
You were seeing everything. Okay.
And hearing the interference. So there
Interference.
there
So
were
everybody
two
needs,
things.
so all the panelists and everybody need to like mute themselves, and maybe we could just try it one more time with everybody,
sure.
with
Yeah, that's a
everybody
good idea.
muted, and then see if it's any better. And if it's not, then I'll do a hardwire connection if I need to, but it should, I mean, I have enough speed here, they tell me, to accomplish this. So let's see if I can do this and mute myself somehow. Let me stop sharing. Wait, yeah, we want to stop sharing that. And okay, I'm just going to go ahead and mute myself right. Spiral aloes who don't produce offsets or stems. So let's first talk about seeds. Let's first talk about leaf cuttings and how easy that is to accomplish. All you need to do is choose a plant with a juicy leaf, such as these sedums. They have a lot of water content, or this graptopetalum as well.
What's happening is it's like freeze frame.
How do you know if it's a good candidate for leaf cutting? Okay, so how was it? I know my sister did not mute herself, so maybe that interfered with it a little bit, but
It was a little better with us all muted, but I do think that the speed is a problem.
Speed is a problem. Okay.
That's internet.
Yeah. So I will talk to my tech guy about that, but I don't want to waste your time going through the whole video right now. So we'll skip the rest of it, and then I'll experiment in the meantime. Okay, so let me close.
No, Janice.
Yeah.
So if this happened tomorrow, would you be able just to maybe, if you would mute the actual audio of the video, you can talk while you're showing the video and just use that instead. You know, because the picture is coming over very clear. It's just that you know, it's not matching the words on your mouth.
Okay, so the audio, that we have that problem with my cardio dance class, where the sound is always behind the audio. I mean, the video is ahead of the audio.
Yeah.
All the time. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I will just not share the computer audio, and I'll talk. How's that?
Do you want to try it really quick and make sure that you're not muting yourself? Or
okay, yeah, let me stop the share and start it again. Okay. Now I'm hearing that because but you don't all hear it, right? None of you hear it? Okay. Right. So this is distracting for me to hear it myself. So I need to mute myself. Okay. So I need to mute myself completely. Now it's less distracting. I don't hear myself talk. So here you're taking a leaf. You want to make sure it has a clean break from the stem, and there's no visible damage to the tip of the leaf. And then you can be more successful with roots developing from that tip. So just choose a juicy leaf, ideally from one of these kinds of plants that have juicy leaves. Lay it on the soil, wet the soil slightly, and leave it in a semi-shade situation so it doesn't dry the leaf out too much. Because if the leaf dries out before it roots, it won't have any viability. Okay, so that was a test. Ugh, that was stressful. Let me go back. Let me pause that.
Yeah, it seems like the frames are quicker probably than normal. Like it's almost like fast forwarded.
let me get rid of that screen share. I'm gonna stop it, stop it, stop it. How do I get rid of it? Somehow it keeps playing for me, so I need to stop the recording. Just stop cloud. Oh, now I don't want to do that. Oh, geez. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get this to, here we go. That's awkward. I need to stop the share here is what I need to do. I got to remember to do stop the share, because if I don't, it keeps playing in my ears, even though you don't see it. Oh, okay. I'll work on that, guys. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. I don't want to do that. I can share. That kind of unnerved me. Just
Is your is that, oh, the videos, it's embedded. Okay.
Well, it was, but I went actually to my desktop rather than using the embedded video here.
Oh.
I guess I could just go from here. Yeah, actually that's less awkward, but then you probably won't hear the sound. That's
let's see if it has the fast forward issue though. Maybe it's better.
Oh, maybe it's better. Okay, see if you can hear it.
Oh,
No.
maybe it is this internet, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, so it wasn't any better in the embedded mode, right?
Right, right.
And it's a smaller screen too, so that's not ideal. Okay. I'll practice some in between and get this right. Sorry about that.
That's why we're doing a practice. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now what time are we at? 1:40. So we've only let's see how long the rest of the slides take me. No, I don't want to do that. I want to keep moving. Okay, so questions, any questions after that propagation video? That's we're at this point. If there are none, then we'll continue on and talk about pre-planting considerations. So before you put anything in the ground, you want to make sure you have adequate sun, hopefully ideal climate, and if you don't, then you have to deal with that and make some alterations. And hopefully you have ideal soil, but if you don't have ideal soil, then again, you're going to have to make some amending or do some amending to improve it. And then you want good drainage. That's critical for succulents growth. And you want to control the garden size, because a large, massive garden full of succulents is really hard to move through. So let's continue. Sun. So you're going to need a minimum of 4 to 6 hours of sun a day for photosynthesis to take place. And so make sure you're not growing something in all-day shade. It could be disastrous. Indirect or morning sun is best if you live in a hot climate. The variegated yellow leaves, now remember they can't handle as much sun. So if the more yellow in the leaves, the less sun they can tolerate. And also more sun usually improves colors for many succulents and makes them either pinker, redder, or a deeper shade. So just keep that in mind, as well as any kind of stress. Cold and lack of water will do the same thing. And this is an example here of 2 plants. Here's an Echeveria elegans grown in full sun, and here's the same plant that was growing underneath a large plant and never saw the sun. See the elongated stem regions here? This plant is seeking the sun, and maybe right here it found the sun, and so it's looking a little bit normal. But that's what happens when you grow things in the shade. Keep that in mind. Here are some of my low light favorites, and you notice they're all variegated and have a lot of yellow in them. So These are the ones I prefer to put in shady areas because they pop, you know, they actually brighten up a shady area. These two are Agaves, attenuatas on the top. In the middle, we have some various aeoniums. And I will label them in many slides. In this case, they're not labeled, but that's a Swartkop, and this one's a Sunburst, and this one's a Mardi Gras. And over here we have Kiwi aeonium, and this is a Portulacaria afra, or an elephant food plant in a variegated form. Now this is what happens when you put plants with too much yellow pigment in them in direct sun all day, and especially hot direct sun. You'll get sunburn. This aeonium on the right is a sunburst, but it has more yellow pigment than green, and these florets typically don't grow to full size just because of the fact that they have less pigment in their leaves. So this one will die before it even flowers in this case. And it's kind of a genetic anomaly when that takes place. It's just like a plant that reverts to a completely green plant. You'll see that as well. In many cases, you'll see kiwi aeoniums growing, and they will start out variegated, and then all of a sudden you'll see a stem over here that's all completely green, and that's just an anomaly that takes place, a reversion process. So here are some sun and heat-loving succulents. And some of them may also be cold tolerant. We'll discuss that a little bit later. This is a golden barrel cactus on the left. This is a Euphorbia sticks on fire, and a Puntia macrocentra, and some Agave americana, this and Agave americana, and some other agaves here. And this is a Portulacaria afra that I mentioned before. And this is a green leafed one, not as much yellow in the leaves, so it can actually tolerate a lot of sun and heat both. Here, we're talking about climate and temperature. Now, in an ideal world, in an ideal environment, succulents would prefer to grow in 60 to 80 degree weather. And if you have that kind of climate, then bravo for you, you're going to have great success with succulents. If you happen to have any hail or really frosty temperatures, then some of these won't survive. For instance, this is over here, we have a Calandrinia spectabilis, a rock purslane, and this is what happened to it in some hail that we had here in Half Moon Bay. Now, we don't always have hail every year, but the past couple of years we've had hail. So in this case, you'd want to try to, if you anticipated the hail, you'd want to go out and ideally cover it up with some row cover. And here's an example of what happens to an agave attenuata with frost. It just like wilts after it's frozen. It's very odd not to have questions during this for answering things, but I'll keep plugging along. Here are some heat-tolerant succulents. And not all of these are sun tolerant, because the one you have in the lower right corner here, the Portulacaria afra, is a variegated one, and that one wouldn't tolerate intense sun all day. Although in Half Moon Bay, we don't have intense sun all day, so it does survive okay in full sun. But here are some examples of ones that can handle the heat better than others. Cacti, of course, are the ones that can handle the most heat and sun. Then next, it would be agaves, and then the least tolerant of sun would be aloes. That's why a lot of times you see aloes planted in underneath plants or in the shadier regions if you live in a really hot climate. Again, I'm mentioning the sun and heat loving succulents once again, because we're talking about climate now, and I won't go over those again since I've already reviewed them. And some cold hardy succulents. I have people stopping by my nursery and asking me, well, what will live in Montana? I'll say, well, not a whole lot of succulents will survive. And they said, well, we have one, and that's sempervivum. So this sempervivum over here in the lower right corner actually can survive under snow. I'm not sure about the other. Actually, I think the others might survive with a little bit of snow as well. And basically the ones with the deeper root systems like aloes, sempervivums, and agaves tend to tolerate more cold than other succulents, or ones with, ones with less juicy leaves, for instance. The yucca is another example, Delospermas, and maybe creeping sedums like the sedum rupestre, lemon ball. Cold temperatures usually do improve colors, as I mentioned before, just like more heat and lack of water. All of that improves the colors of the plants. So here's how you can protect against hail, for instance. This is what I did in my backyard garden when I anticipated hail. And so this year I didn't have any of those pitted leaves, but aeoniums and agave attenuatas will definitely show signs of hail damage. Not the first day, but after the second day, you'll see it if you don't protect them from frost or hail. Here are some heat and cold tolerant agaves that you might be interested in planting. This one right here and all the top row ones get to be about 3 feet in size, except maybe the agave stricta is a little smaller. This agave Victoria Regine or Queen Victoria agave, it gets to be about 2 feet in size and looks like a ball. It's very, very beautiful once it grows, but it grows very slowly. And this quadricolor down here stays pretty small, about 18 inches. And this agave perii retro choke, I think also stays relatively small, maybe about 18 inches. Next up, we're going to talk about soil. This is key to successful gardening, whether it be succulents or any plants. And what you see here is some black, rich soil, which is full of sequestered carbon or humus. And so anytime you see black soil, it's usually an indication that it's a rich soil full of carbon. It's not always the case, apparently, but in most cases. Ideal soil composition is critical if you can achieve it. And you can't really change the minerals in your soil, but you can amend it to help improve it and make things a little bit better. So here we're talking about 45% mineral. That'd be clay, silt, and sand. Those are the heavy minerals in your soil that weigh it down. So if you had a pot of dirt, which is full of minerals, and a pot of potting mix, the weight difference would be significant. You would just automatically know which one is potting mix and which one is dirt or soil from the ground, because of the mineral content weighs so much. Now most soil contains a certain amount of organic matter, and the better the soil, the more organic matter typically in it. And that's at least 5%. And you can have more than that. And that's why potting mix is it's basically 100% organic matter. It's all decomposable material in potting mixes most of the time. And then you want 50% pore space, and that pore space can shift between air and water. So when your pore space depletes to 50% air, then it's time to water the succulents again. Don't want to overwater succulents. That's something that people have a tendency to do. Now, we master gardeners are always referring to the soil food web, and if you don't understand or have never heard of it, then I suggest you Google it, because it's really an interesting subject. And it's critical to plant health. It's not critical to plant growth necessarily, but it's critical to plant health. And this is about all of the microorganisms in the soil, and the nematodes and the spiders and the mites and the worms working in a symbiotic relationship to give the plants what they need and provide nutrients to the plants when the plant needs it the most. So all these little critters in the soil, you need to be kind to them, and you don't want to discourage their growth. And by raking away the leaves or raking away and getting rid of your mulch, you're really going to deprive your microbes in the soil the food that they need to grow. So those little critters in the soil you need to keep happy. And there are far more beneficial microbes than pathogenic ones in the soil. Not all bacteria are bad for you. The majority of them are good for you. I need to get that across to everybody. There's more microbes in 1 teaspoon of healthy soil than there are people on earth. Keep that in mind. So please be kind to your microbes and feed them what they want. Leave your leaves, put a little mulch on top keep a little mulch, at least, you know, a couple of 1 to 2 inches or so for succulents, more for other plants. And that will keep your microbes happy, and that will feed your plants the nutrients it needs when it needs it, when they need them. So in terms of soil amendments, let's say you don't have ideal soil. What are you going to put on top of that soil? Well, I already alluded to the fact that you want to put decomposable matter, anything that was once living on top of the soil, so that you're feeding the soil life. And that can be compost, which is great for the soil. That also has nutrients besides, you know, just carbon. So I tend to use aged horse manure mixed with shavings, or my own compost for any plants that I plant in the garden. And fish emulsion can also be used if you prefer that method, but it has to be applied more often because it's in a liquid form. And then I always keep a little bit of the wood shavings or the mulch on top to help retain moisture and to help keep feeding the soil life as things grow. And by the way, if you have heavy clay soil or sandy soil, putting compost or mulch on top of the soil will improve either soil. So it'll make sandy soil a little stickier and hold more water, and it will actually help aerate a heavy clay soil because when you add life to the soil, they create little tunnel systems and little structures in the soil, and you'll see in the next slide how that helps. Here's a sample of soil that I took out of my backyard under a parking lot. So you can imagine, the one on the right, this one right here, I dug up underneath 6 inches of gravel, and that's how heavy and compact it was. Now in the same parking lot, we had an area that was mulch and always had mulch on it. Now nothing aggregates and the pores in that soil is going to grow things much more readily and in a healthy manner than this soil right here. You're not going to get 50% airspace in this soil for sure on the right. And here's an example of extremely clay soil that's like moldable yellow clay that you can mold into things. It's really awful soil. And if you have soil like this, then I would advise amending the soil by working in some redwood fines or wood shavings, 1/3 of that matter, and then 1/3 of quality compost or aged horse manure, and then 1/3 of pumice, coarse sand, or very small lava rock, and that will improve the drainage and actually start feeding the soil life at the same time and create more aggregates as you go along. So in terms of site selection, pick a site that's higher in elevation versus lower. And then your plants will be a much happier situation. So create mounds. You can do this by creating mounds with rocks. As I have in this lower photo here, there's about 4 or 5 rocks encircling this mound that act as kind of a little retaining wall for this mound. And so I use a lot of rocks, and also the rocks serve as stepping stones, because getting into this succulent mound to do any maintenance can be difficult, and you can do a lot of damage if you don't have something to step on. And stay away from downspouts and sump pump outlets. Over here in this photo, you see the succulent garden off in the background. And initially the downspout would just drain right into that area, and it was just awful mess. So what we did was we took a pipe here and we connected it to the downspout and it diverted it over to the driveway. So take a look at your site carefully before you plant. And this one, of course, is naturally elevated, well, because it has a retaining wall. This is a garden here in Burlingame, on Howard Avenue in Burlingame. And I've never seen anything grow so prolifically as this garden. And I think they have, number 1, perfect soil. Number 2, great drainage, and they have perfect climate. They didn't have any hail like we did in Half Moon Bay. And in Burlingame, they don't get extreme heat. So I think that's why this garden is thriving. Here's some small examples of some small spaces where you can get in and actually reach in and do the maintenance. I can go behind this garden. This is in front of my place here. And actually I have a little 1-foot pathway behind here that I can get in and do some maintenance from the rear. Here I can reach in from all sides into this space and maintain that area. And note the 18-inch wire fence that I have here along this. This is on Main Street in Half Moon Bay. And that is the dogs and the people are always walking on things. So what I did was I put an 18-inch little wire fence around it, and that kept the dogs out of it. If you ever want to plant on a sidewalk, that's what you should do. Here's some other examples of how you break up spaces. On the left, a neighbor of mine on Poplar Street put pathways in and created a beautiful space that way. And that way she can access all of her plants. And then over here, we added a pathway. This person who planted this happens to be somewhat disabled, and this enables her to walk up those steps gradually and do her own maintenance. And over here, we have little footprint stepping stones. But that's kind of cute. Okay, so any questions? Gosh. Anybody want to talk? Go ahead and talk.
Are we supposed to just ask a question, or do we go to the Q&A on our screen?
When I call up the Q&A, I can't type anything in there. It's like,
Either can I.
yeah,
I think because we're panelists right now.
right.
Oh, okay.
We're not
So
attendees, yeah.
so if we were attendees, we could go to Q&A and type something in. Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious, would we all see it?
You have a choice, probably like chat, to be.
Like maybe it'll light up when there's a question in there?
Well, I thought I was not going to be able to see those because it would be a distraction to me. Is that right?
Right, and so we'll monitor it, Lauren and I.
Yeah.
And then at this time, we would repeat the question to you if we saw one in there that you could, address.
Yeah, yeah. So this is very different, talking to no people in front of me. Oh my gosh, this is hard.
You're doing fine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, but I think I need to invite some people into my apartment and just, I think it would go so much better if I had people in front of me. Okay, well, they'd have to be related to me though, wouldn't they? Yes, and wear masks and everything.
From the same household.
Yes, from the same household. Yes, that's true. Okay. Okay, I guess I'll keep plugging along here. And now anybody who wants to leave can leave, because I just want to time my presentation for the rest of the people who are willing to stick around.
Okay, I gotta go. Bye. Thanks for the invite.
Okay.
Bye.
And so Lauren and Stephanie and Christiane, are you going to be leaving too? You don't have to necessarily stick around if you don't want to.
Christiane, are you on?
Yeah, I just unmuted myself.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna ask you about what for tomorrow, or I'm sorry, for Saturday, the login. Did you already send that to me?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, all right. So I can catch the rest of the presentation on Saturday if you don't need me right now, Janice.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I might have to hop off too.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to time my slides to see if I need to shorten my talk.
Okay, and Janice, if you want to practice again on that one video part,
yeah,
just send me an email and I can, we could get together again on Zoom if you want to.
Oh, so this is Stephanie. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I will do that. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah. We also can start maybe a little bit early on Saturday, like come maybe like half an hour. I think that's what we did last time.
Oh,
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
So we can just go through everything, make sure the slides are sharing before we go start
Half an
recording.
hour
That's a good
before.
idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so since you, Christiane, recorded this, I'll know how long that portion just took me because I'm not really keeping track of it entirely.
Okay.
But I can review the recording fairly soon and then figure out the timing. Can I, Christiane?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. All right. So if I'm not boring everybody yet, I'll just keep going. Huh? Okay. There we go. Okay, so now let's talk about landscape design. This is my neighbor's yard again. I did not design it, wish I had. She actually only consulted with me regarding the health of her plants because they were not thriving. So once we put my little, or what we call grower's magic, or horse manure with shavings, or aged horse manure with shavings, it's very critical you use correctly composted horse manure, or you could introduce pathogenic bacteria. But once she started mulching with it, then everything seemed to thrive. Okay, so the succulent landscape design, the pros and cons. Well, the pros are pretty obvious, I think, to most people. Very drought tolerant. There's water holding capacity in the leaves. It can offer year-round color because the foliage of many plants are very colorful. You don't necessarily have to wait for them to flower to be colorful. Relatively gopher resistant and deer resistant, although I've heard of some agaves just being eaten to death. And there are some aeoniums that the deer will nibble on, but for the most part, they're relatively gopher and deer resistant. Usually very easy to transplant because their root systems are only maybe 6 inches deep, unless you're talking about agaves or aloes, and then they tend to get a little deeper root systems, but most of them are easy to move around. They're very easy to propagate, as we already saw. And the cons are involve temperature problems. They're sensitive to extreme cold or hail. Many are sensitive to extreme heat. They break easily, they're fragile and break easily, and they're dangerous if they're spiky. So you don't want to put agave americanas on a street corner, and because people could really take an eye out if they pass by. And the big one is they can rot if they stay too moist for too long. And that can be a problem if we get a very wet winter where things don't dry out. So in terms of design basics, I'm going to talk about color and contrast, and then sizes, shapes, and textures, and then heights and layers. Those three elements are kind of critical to designing any type of landscape. And in this yard here on Howard Avenue, you'll notice the different heights of the plants, the different colors, the different leaf variations. So all of that is a critical component if you want it to be pleasing to the eye. This happens to be another master gardener's backyard. And she usually does this presentation with me when we do it at another location. But as you can see, when things are in bloom, it's very stunning. And even when these are not in bloom, it still remains colorful, just because the foliage of these plants tends to be more colorful than a lot of perennials. A little bit about the color wheel. I tend to do warm colors together and cool colors together, but you don't have to. You can mix it all up and it looks wonderful, just like the garden behind me, which is the botanical garden in San Luis Obispo. You can put any colors together and it looks wonderful. But if you want to go with a warm tones and choose colors from the browns, reds, oranges, and yellows, or if you want to stay with the cool colors, then you choose the violets, the ocean colors, blues, kind of the greens, of course, and the yellow greens. So yellow, you'll note that yellows can look great with either of those combinations. And I tend to use a lot of complementary colors in my gardens because it makes the garden pop and come alive. And what I mean by complementary is the colors opposite each other on the color wheel. So yellow is opposite purple on the color wheel, blue is opposite orange, green is opposite red. And when you put those colors together, it makes for a vibrant looking garden. As you can see, we've got purple and yellow, and a violet and a yellow green and a blue and an orange and a reds and greens. Here is what you would call the cool colors on the right. Those are your basic blue ocean colors. And on the left, I've incorporated the cool colors with a pop of pink, but it's all in the same hue. It's a pastel shade, so it blends well together. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to read all the names of these, but this is an Echeveria Afterglow. This is an Agave Americana, Oscularia deltoides, Conte Echeveria. And hopefully they can go back and look at the recording and get this information later, I'm guessing. So here's a little vignette of warm colors that I chose. And there's some red tones in here, yellows and greens. And then on the side, we've got a little bit of, well, a little pink, but that's okay. I think it's a nice color combination. Here's contrasting brightness, and that's why I like to incorporate a few non-succulents, but these are drought-tolerant plants, and I tend to use a lot of phormiums or New Zealand flax. Right here is a black adder New Zealand flax combined with kiwi aeonium and a crassula campfire, and just the contrasting brightness here really helps this pop, as well as this combination here as well. We've got the dark Swartkop in the back, and we've got Sunburst on the sides and the Mardi Gras down below. And also, it's very important to keep in mind not to have the same height across the board in your garden. You want to vary the sizes, the shapes, and the textures so your eye doesn't get bored. So you notice this is all different shapes involved here on the upper left, and here on the upper right, we've got spikiness from the phormiums and the Agave Americana. We've got a different type of leaf down below as the filler, and then more different shapes down below as well. And here, this happens to be the Ruth Brinkoft garden. And look at the difference in the textures there that they incorporated into this cactus setting. I mentioned briefly also that I use phormiums quite a bit. Another one I use besides the blackadder, which is in lower right here, is the Evening Glow up on the top. That tends to get a little huge in certain soil conditions. So there's another one called Jester that stays a little smaller than that, if you don't want a plant overtaking your garden. These leucadendrons are nice backdrops for succulents as well, and drought tolerant. This is a Safari Sunset. This is a Safari Gold Strike. And this one over here is a Bechernaria Yucca Flamingo Glow, or Yuccadoides, excuse me. I gotta move my, Yuccoides Flamingo Glow. And over here we have a Cordyline Electric Pink. So those are basically the companion plants that I tend to use in my succulent gardens to lend some more variety in terms of shapes and textures. And here, this is the Howard Street garden again, that apparently the owners tell me they get a lot of compliments from this garden, so I should probably stick my sign on that one. But, and it's not fully grown. It's only 1.5 years old, but this I just cleaned up, and it was pretty full of this sedum in the front was covering a lot of the rocky areas and everything. So it tended to need a little cleanup once or twice a year. You need to clean them up to make them look a little tidier. And I cleaned out some of these aeoniums from the side so the agave becomes more visible. And behind it, I have a leucadendron. So this was a pretty deep front yard, but we had to break it up. So we added a path in the middle to break it up. And then I put some spillers in the front here. So this Oscularia deltoides over here on the right and the left, this will eventually cascade over the side, as well as this yellow. If you leave it grow long enough, things will tend to cascade. And there's also spiral aloe that's very tiny right now. And of course the tortoise, yeah. So if you don't really need it as a focal point because you're going to have the plants overtake it soon enough, but people just love that tortoise. Sometimes people use fountains as a centerpiece as well. So let's talk about thrillers, spillers, and fillers. And the last slide didn't mention that. Oh, yes, it did. Excuse me. I forgot to mention the thrillers, fillers, and spillers concept. That's a design that does not originate from me, but you will hear a lot about it, especially for container gardens. You want to use something that's tall and eye-catching as a thriller. Then you want to use plants that are lower to the ground that fill in space. And then you want the spillers in the front, like these osculare deltoides that are eventually going to spill. Sorry, I missed that the first time. All right, so here we have some tall specimen plants that catch your eyes that are the thrillers. This agave over here, Americana, and these agave attenuatas, and these yuccas, these yucca trees will eventually get very tall. Over here we have a fountain that is converted into a planter, and that serves as the centerpiece or the thriller in this case. And you want to locate these things according to your vantage point. So if you're looking at it from a certain vantage point, then you put your taller plants behind, and then you layer the next layer in front of that so you can still see the shorter layer, and then your ground covers will go in front of that so that you can visually see everything. If you're looking at it from more than one vantage point, then you want to put your thriller in the middle, as in this left-hand photo here. This centerpiece is in the middle of a circular area so that it can be viewed from all angles. Here's some examples of some fillers that I use. I use a lot of aeoniums as fillers because they're medium height plants. And also I use a lot of these echeverias, and this happens to be one of my favorites in Afterglow. And even this rock can be used as a filler, and it doesn't need water. And so yeah, I like it when Christiane laughs. You should react more often, Christiane, because then I can, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. Yeah, so, and they can serve as stepping stones as well. So, and here's some, there's not that many succulents that actually spill over, but here's a few of them. This Crassula Red Pagoda. This is actually Acetum, no, this is Acetum pork and beans. And I should probably have this list in front of me so I don't stutter and stammer over the names of these things. And this is a Calancholy Pamela. And some aeoniums here. And these are not really good. I'm going to change these slides up because I'm just noticing that these are not great spillers. So I'll have to make a note to myself to change that up. But when you're dealing with the ground covers, or I should say spillers are the ground covers, the low-lying plants, you want to make sure they're not the same color as the soil, because if they are, then you're never going to see them. They're not going to pop, and people will miss seeing them. So just keep that in mind for the low-lying ground covers and spillers. And here's what I call poppers, those plants that are not green. So anything that's not green will pop in your garden because most plants tend to be green, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, so here we've got reds, pinks, and yellows. And these are the ones that I tend to use a lot in my gardens to help add some brightness to them. And here's some examples of some succulents if you need to fill up a large space. This is one of my favorites in the upper left corner is Calandrinia spectabilis, or rock purslane. It blooms almost all year here on the coast. And if I didn't cut it back in the winter, it would be blooming even in the winter time. But I tend to cut this back because of the sprawling habit. It gets to be like 5 feet by 5 feet. So you want to make sure you contain it before spring starts. Cut it back to about a 1 by 2 foot ball, and it'll be ugly for a while, but it'll come back looking even more beautiful. And if the flowers tend to fade in the heat of the summer, then cut the flowers off and they'll rebloom again. So it's a great plant, and it's also a pollinator. And then this, yeah, Thank you for saying that, Christina. That helped. I like the oohs and ahs. That really inspires me. Yeah.
I know some of these have just been absolutely beautiful to look at.
Oh, well, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And that feedback is so important. So maybe I should you should stay live somehow. And then this is a torch aloe, or aloe arborescens. I think that's how it's pronounced. And that gets to be 6 by 6 or minimum, and it can keep growing. So this can become a huge mound because it builds upon itself and keeps growing and growing and growing. And there's some others down here. This is a Cyclops aeonium. This is just a jade plant. As everybody knows, they can get massive. This is the Portulacaria afra again. That gets really big, unless you choose a compact form. There are hybrids that are lower to the ground. This is a Calandrenia again. This is a cotyledon, and this is a aeonium canary. I better brush up on this pronunciation of that, and I'll brush up on the pronunciation of that agave in the meantime too. And this is the bulbine fructensens. These all get oh, here they are, the names. Excuse me. I'm focusing on the photos and I'm not looking at the names, which are spelled out for me. Oh my God. Okay.
This is practice.
I know. Okay, here we go. Okay, so, and here's an example of my demonstration garden. I try to include just about all of my favorite plants in it so people can visually see what it looks like in a garden. So stop by if you're in Half Moon Bay and take a peek. Here's a list of pollinators. If you're interested in attracting hummingbirds and bees and butterflies, these are some of my favorites. Calandrenia spectabilis and Aloe arborescens, Aeonium cyclops and Sedum autumn joys. And there's some more listed here as well. I won't read them all right now. Here's a list of my favorites. And if I have time, I will read them. If I find myself short of time for the actual presentation, I'll let people go back and look at this at the recording and get these names, I think, because I've already mentioned a lot of these names.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Q&A. Okay. Maybe this is going to be really long. I don't know. Okay, so any questions? Anybody?
Well, one thing that sort of struck me funny when you were talking about planting on the sidewalk and putting the little, you know, fence for the dogs.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 male beagles, and you know, when we walk them, I can't really control it. Just like happens when they have to go.
Yeah.
And we have a cranky neighbor that has accused me of purposely letting my dogs pee on her plants that are planted like right on the sidewalk. And I think it may have happened once, and she said something. And so my husband and I always make sure that they never get near this part of her garden. But she has still continued on next door to cyberbully us of like, oh, you let your dogs pee on my thing and I garden in there and everything. And finally somebody spoke up to her and said, you know, like, you know, when you plant something so close, you know, how can you expect a dog not to do that? And it's just, you know, and then she was like, well, mind your own business.
Yeah.
And then people were really funny. They go after her a lot on next door, but anyway, but it's kind of like, you know, so I try not to let my dogs pee on stuff, but it's hard to control.
Yeah, and I put that little fence up even along a larger area I have with just that are non-succulents, just because when they tend to just, you know, jump into the garden bed, they're breaking things. So I mean, that's more effective than a sign. I find it more effective than a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me move on. So care and maintenance, and watering is a critical component. You don't want to give it too much. And then again, you want it to have some water, or plants all need water. We're going to talk about soil amendments, and even though I've touched on that lightly already, and plant care and pests if I have the time. So here So anyway, it's very important to let your soil dry out between waterings. And what I tell a lot of my clients is to get one of these water meters, moisture meters, and poke it in the soil. And when it says dry, water again. Don't be afraid to give it a lot of water, but until it says wet, and then you water it until the moisture meter says wet. And then you wait and wait and wait until it dries out. Now in Half Moon Bay, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month before it dries out, depending on our weather. If we have a lot of fog, you know, I may not need to water for a month. If you're in a warmer climate, then you may need to water weekly. But I think never more often than weekly in our Bay Area. I doubt if you would ever need to water more often than that. And whatever you do, don't water 5 minutes every other day, like I've seen some people's timers set for. I see that so often, 5 minutes every other day. Oh my God. Okay, and when you water the entire zone. That's why I like this drip system here. This is like a Netafim drip system with emitters built into the 1/2-inch tubing. And it really saturates the entire area, not one little side of the plant with a little 1/4-inch spaghetti tube that, you know, hits one side of the plant and runs for 5 minutes and only waters half the plant. And then you want water to get to the microbes as well, because they need water as well, and they can't do their decomposing process without water. So you want to wet the entire zone, unless you have pathways, and then don't water the pathways, of course. So mornings are best for watering, and if you choose to hand water, use one of these water breakers, like a 400-dram water breaker. It's a gentle flow. But it will wash off, let's say if you have aphids or something, it'll help wash those off and clean the dust off plants and things. And then again, I'll just mention that less water can improve the color of succulents. So keep that in mind. If you want brighter, redder colors, then don't overwater. And down here in this picture, you'll notice this echeveria that got too much water in the winter and started rotting. So that's what rot usually looks like with an echeveria. With an agave, it tends to look a little different, but I have yet to take a good photo of that to show you. And fertilizing versus amending. Everyone's always asking me, well, what fertilizer should I use? And I go, well, you don't really need to use a fertilizer per se, because that implies synthetic fertilizers, and plants don't really need that. If you just supply basically the food that the microbes need to eat on the top of the soil, then your plants will normally thrive. And organic amendments, such as compost, are sustainable, and synthetic ones are not. Organic feeds the soil life, as I said. And if you really want to use a synthetic fertilizer, then no more than a 5-to-2 ratio of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is recommended. But it will only provide NPK, and it won't necessarily give you those other trace minerals and micronutrients that the plant needs. And the plant is going to get those micronutrients from the soil. It's in the soil, it just needs to get to the plant, and the microbes in the soil enable those nutrients to make their way to the plant. And I usually, apply about a 1/2-inch to 1 inch of quality compost or aged horse manure with shavings twice a year, early in the fall before the rains, and then in the spring before the burst of growth usually happens. And you could also use compost tea or fish emulsion as well. And do keep in mind, as I said before, that you want to make sure the horse manure is well aged. It can contain weed seeds if it's not well aged, and it could contain pathogenic bacteria. And then also remember that growth does not necessarily equal health. If you, for instance, if you feed a child, if you give a child growth hormone, that child will grow immensely, but will that child be healthy? No, that child will not be healthy. Or if they're eating fast food, will they grow? Yes, a child will grow eating fast food, but will they be healthy? Not necessarily. So you want to think about supplying all the nutrient needs for essential health and not just growth when you think about feeding your plants. Okay, and basic plant care is just pruning back things that tend to get overgrown, you know, deadheading flowers once they've expired. Leave the flowers on there for those the little bees and butterflies as long as you can, even if they're not that pretty, if you can tolerate them. And removing the dead lower leaves of like aeoniums, as you see here, these are always getting dead, especially this time of year, they start dying underneath, and it's just a natural process. You just need to exfoliate them. You can also divide succulents, you know, when they're growing, and propagate them from divisions, and don't be afraid to throw them away. I mean, I throw out a lot of succulent leaves and material here, although I will put some out on the street and give it away on Nextdoor, and people always appreciate the cuttings. So that's another alternative if you don't want to put it in your green waste bin. This is my biggest problem, snails and slugs. As you can see over here, I went out one night with my headlamp on, and this is what I found eating this senecio. There's got to be at least a dozen snails on this thing. It was amazing. But you're not going to find them during the day. They're always hiding underneath rocks or underneath the leaves and things. So you have to hunt them out during the day. So there's a variety of methods you can use. You can eliminate their hiding places, check behind rocks, reduce the humidity by switching from sprinkler system to drip irrigation. You can decrease the thickness of the mulch, go out with a headlamp on and hand pick them off like I do. You can trap them underneath cardboard or pie tins of beer, they say might work. You can put up copper foil because they usually won't cross copper foil. You can introduce natural enemies, maybe some insects. Ducks and geese are good, but chickens are not good. Chickens will eat the snails and your plants. So ducks and geese are better than chickens. And if you want to use a bathed, iron phosphate is the safest. It's organically approved for organic gardening, and that would be like Sluggo, for instance, is iron phosphate. And for more information, you can always access our pest notes by Googling IPM.UCANR, and you can come up with all our pest notes, and that will give you more guidance in that area. Now, the only other problem I might see in the ground, in my in-ground plants, would be aphids once in a great while. I usually don't find this to be a problem in my garden beds because I think the plants are so healthy, they're more resistant to pests and diseases when they're in the ground. In a pot is a different situation because pots, of course, don't, you know, the microbial population might die out in a pot when it becomes overly dry, for instance. So you're not going to have as much microbes in a pot with potting mix as you are from the soil, and soil has access to more nutrients from underneath layers, whereas pots will limit, their nutrients are limited. When the plant consumes, or the microorganisms or decompose everything, you're left with roots, right? And very little potting mix and very few nutrients. So the plants suffer in pots more so than in the ground. Some people, especially master gardeners, like to use compost tea, but that is anecdotal. It has yet to be proven in any studies. So I just put that out there for your information. You can incorporate lady beetles into your garden, ladybugs, lady beetles, and then spraying them with water. You can spray them off actually, and get rid of the aphids that way as well. And this is another pest that we had for the past couple of years, and this is a little green caterpillar. You see it over here, circled in red, and it comes from this cabbage moth, and it wreaked havoc on my aeoniums last year because it makes this little cocoon webby stuff, and then it starts eating the leaves, and the leaves start falling off, and it was quite a mess. This year, for some reason, I'm not experiencing as many problems with it, maybe because I seem to have more birds in my backyard. I don't know where all the birds came from, but maybe that's one of the reasons I don't seem to have this problem this year as much. And let's see, and then this is another sign of damage. So you'll know if you have this little green caterpillar because you'll see webbing, and then you'll see the leaves eaten like this. And especially the apical tip will be eaten first because it's the most tender. So that's an indication of leaf rolling larva damage. I think this might be the last slide, perhaps. Any other questions? I think that's the end of my presentation, actually. And if there are no more questions, then here's the references that you can read through on the recording. And I'd like to thank BAWSCA for hosting and supporting this presentation. And also, I wanted to let everybody know that you can still get information from the Master Gardeners. And that's one thing I did not mention in the beginning. And usually I put a slide in saying who the Master Gardeners are. So maybe I will put a slide in about who we are in the very beginning so everybody knows what we do.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, and I usually do that and I forgot. But here's how you can access us. It can't be in person, of course, during COVID-19, but you can email us at this email address right here, and you can still call us. And we're open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at these different locations. So we're available to answer your questions free of charge. And I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation and become a Master Gardener at some point. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, I went backwards, didn't I? Okay, that was it. That's it. So go ahead and throw the comments at me if you want.
First of all, you did well. The things that you're going to change are only going to make it better. But basically, your knowledge of the information that you gave came across loud and clear.
Oh, good. Ugh. Well, I've given this presentation a few dozen times, so I think it helps, you know, but it's so different when you don't have reaction from the group, because I'm usually I joke a little bit more. You know, it's hard to joke with someone they're not in front of you, you know.
How do you want to handle input? Because I have a list of about 11 things that you had asked, you know, me to keep track of or whatever.
Oh, okay. So when I said I wanted to add or change something, did you make a list for me, Joe?
I tried to.
Oh, okay.
In some cases I didn't, but you've got the recording, I think, of this.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
back on. But I've got some other comments and things like that. And I don't know if you want to do it offline from this meeting or you want to do it right now or just what?
Oh, you know, I don't care. But Christiane, do you need to stay on for all this, or can you just?
I can go now, but I'm gonna make you the host.
Oh, okay.
So let me see how I can do that. All right. And I'm going to make you the host. So you're in charge of everything right now.
Ah, okay.
And then, so I think the controls have changed a little at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to go. Very nice to meet everybody. Good luck.
Okay, great. Thank
All right.
you.
Good. So there it is. Leave.
All right. Well, in your very first slide, you have an extra parentheses in the date line.
Oh, okay. I mean,
at the very end.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know that. I thought, well, Cynthia vetted these for me, but I keep changing things. Every time I ask her to vet, and I change something. So.
Right. And
things like that are so easy to miss because you see it over and over and over again. You just stop seeing these things after a while. That happens to, I think that happens to me and Nancy. We talk about that all the time. It's like, how did we miss that?
Yeah.
You ought to add if you're editing the slide right now, you ought to add that extra slide for the Master Gardener.
Yes, I do need to do that. I will do that right after this probably. And I was going to bring up Word and start typing these things down, but it might be just faster for me to grab a pen and write this stuff down because I don't think this part's oh, it is recording right now. Okay, it's recording. So I'll listen back. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Video has, I think, a lot of potential, but I think you should scrap it if you can't get it technically to be, smooth. and things like that. It's hard to do. You know, propagation is a whole nother, in a sense, topic. But one overall comment that I had was, and I forgot the title slide where you said, here's what I'm going to talk about. And it wasn't necessarily easy for me to follow when you were transitioning from one topic to the next.
Yeah, and I probably need to use like a speaker presenter view where I can see the next slide coming up, or because that usually helps me if I have the visual of the next slide that's coming up, then I transition better. Yeah.
If you can do that, that'd be great, but you might have to have a separate monitor for that.
Yeah, I might need a separate monitor. Yeah.
So, you know, this, actually, Jill, this is kind of related. And this takes some coordination. And I bet if you and Cynthia did this together, it would be really easy for you to do. But I find it, especially on a Zoom meeting, helpful to have someone else actually operate the slides, just because then I can have everything that I need to view on my screen, and I don't have to worry how it's going to affect how the slides show up for the attendees. And it kind of helps me at least be less distracted on the presenting part, not having to worry about kind of the slides.
Okay, so I'm not sure how, okay.
So I don't know, I mean, I don't know at this point if you could have Stephanie or was it Lauren?
Lauren.
Or even Christiane operate the slides for you. But that, if you can coordinate with one of them, if they could actually do the screen share, then you can have whatever you need to see on your screen, you know, in whatever format, and then you could just present, you know, to the slides that they're.
That might be, I would probably have to say next or something like that if I did that like I did in the beginning, and I think that would be kind of awkward to have to say next. But if there's a way I can stick another screen. I've got like 2 more screens in my house.
Oh.
I've got 3 screens here. I can use my smart TV if I want to. You know?
If you could use another screen to extend your monitor,
yeah,
then you can do what Joe says. You can have, you know, you can have notes or another view.
Yeah.
On another screen.
Yeah.
And you can kind of keep track of it that way.
Okay.
When I do presentations, I'll practice on my iPad Pro, and I'll hook up through HDMI my Dell monitor.
Yeah.
And I can have that Dell monitor kind of be my slide presentation, and I'm working in the computer kind of thing. Nobody sees that. The slide presentation is over here. So you've got separate screens. And I have notes then right in front of me.
Yeah.
Something to think about. And you know, obviously you're giving it Saturday 24/7, and you're going to end up working on this, and you should get some sleep.
How'd you know that, Joe? How'd you know that?
I can sense that this could consume the rest of the time. So, you know, think of the quickest, shortest, simplest way to get there. So in that sense, just like Kelly had mentioned today in the general meeting for the Master Gardener practice session, how she brings up right underneath the camera kind of her notes, and it might just be word notes that she can just kind of look at them and read while the underneath is the slide. Kelly, you might talk to that.
Well, there's actually, you know, in PowerPoint, there's an area for notes, and that can be visualized if I use that other view.
The split screen. The
that
split
screen. Yeah.
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 But this is another way that Kelly has.
Oh, go ahead, Kelly. Yeah.
Well, so if you use the split screen and you put what the audience is seeing off to the side, then you can put the presenter notes just under, you can position that little window just under the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, who said it? Was it Janet? Said it's like a teleprompter.
Right.
Yeah.
You're putting, your notes right near where you're going to be, where you're supposed to be looking.
Well,
Looking
you
at
mean
the camera.
at the camera. Well, unlike Trump, who's always reading, like he goes like this and he reads, and then he turns and then he goes like this, and he's reading from the teleprompter because his head is always like right over here or right over here. And when he sounds logical, he's reading this direction, and when he sounds illogical, he's looking at you. Yeah.
Wait. Who's the logical Trump? That's a okay. Well, you can figure that out or whatever, I'm sure. But
yeah, there's a lot more. Boy, this is going to give me all of my continuing education and all my volunteer hours for the
there
year.
you go. On the early time, you talked about, you used the word adequate sun, and quickly I said, okay, what do you mean by adequate sun? But you had some follow-up slides that kind of addressed the sun nature of things. And you use a lot of examples, a lot of pictures and et cetera, to talk about light versus less light and things like that. So I think it's a non-issue. So just be prepared for a question might come up that says, well, what do you mean by adequate sun? And or don't use the word.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to do a little scripting. Yeah. This will help me not forget things. Sure. if I do that. Yeah.
Then in number 6, it was the heat and cold tolerant, I think you had, or something like that. And I was going to write down, what do you mean by heat and cold? That's kind of two extremes, but
yeah,
you were summarizing some previous slides, I think.
Well, I was talking about climate, so I got to refresh everybody when I change slides that I'm still talking about climate and temperature. And there are some succulents that can tolerate both heat and cold, and agaves happen to be one of them. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know about time, and this is something you need to get feedback on the recording to figure out the actual time development, but calling all the names of these things can have a very time.
I know.
effort.
And yeah. And when you're doing the PowerPoint at Linkso, the advantage to that is that they're going to get the slides and they can just go through at their leisure and read those names. And so I wasn't sure, well, how many of these people are actually going to go back and stop and start the video and read the names? So I wanted to kind of say some of the common names, the ones I use a lot of, but I didn't want to dwell on each and every plant. So if I did that, yeah, I should probably not do that because.
Well, that was
actually, is it possible that BAWSCA can send out the slide set afterward?
Probably. They're going to send out a survey for the Master Gardeners. So they may be able just to send out the slide set too. Yeah,
because I think with webinars, I think you actually do get everyone's email addresses.
Yeah, they will have the emails. Yeah.
Oh, and for registration, they would have that too.
They would have it. So I will. That's a good point, Joe. So I think that I'm going to talk less about specific names of plants, except for
that's the whole issue, is how do you find time to really concentrate on the propagation, the identification, the design, the care.
Well, I think once I reevaluate this presentation, I may just eliminate propagation entirely. It might be the easiest thing to do because I may have an hour right there without the propagation, which is 13 minutes, right?
Right.
So if I delete anything, I guess I should just delete the propagation part. Yeah.
That's a big chunk, especially if there's a technical issues and things.
Yeah, I don't want technical issues. So I'll go look back at the recording and I'll do the timing of it and see see what
Yeah,
happens.
I mean, it's dependent on how much time you need to erase, or you have plenty of time, or just what. So
Yeah.
you
I
use the reference or the word horse manure multiple times. My suggestion is, even though it's appropriate and it's a good example and things like that, it's really any herbivore manure.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
And you know, especially when you talk about soil in general and compost and things like that, it really is more than just, but I agree the drying of it is still valuable regardless of which animal.
Right. But, you know, herbivore would also include chickens, and we don't recommend chicken manure because it's so high in nitrogen, it turns things too green. You know, too much green growth, you know, green leaf growth. So, I mean, it's great for vegetables, right? Because you want a lot of green growth, but.
Well, you might actually mention that then somewhere.
Yeah, maybe I should. And well, you know, and herbivores, I mean, people have goats, I guess, and what other animals? Sheep.
And actually, aren't chickens kind of omnivores? They eat a lot of bugs.
Oh, they
right?
eat bugs. Excuse me. Yes, they are. So yeah. So that wouldn't. So if I just said herbivore in parentheses or something, yeah.
But I think it's a good idea, like you mentioned, to maybe specifically say, you know, not chickens. because people may not think.
A lot of people have backyard chickens.
Yeah, and they wouldn't necessarily think that they're omnivores.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's why at least you're saying horse manure as opposed to manure.
Yeah, and
you need to point out why. So anyway, you decide. It's an observation on my part.
Yeah, that's good to know. Okay.
Again, I kind of felt like you need to introduce the topic, the kind of the section of slides that you're going to now talk about maintenance, or you set it up saying, here's what we're going to talk about. And there were four bullets.
Yeah.
But later on, we never know when that transition happens. All of a sudden
Yeah,
it's mainly delineated by the Q&A breaks, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe that's
so maybe just making more of an introduction to each section after the Q&A, maybe that would
now we're going to talk
kind
about
of get what you're
now
talking
we're going
about,
to talk. Yes. Okay. So something yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
I actually did notice it. You know, when at the end of each Q&A, there was the slide with kind of the next
the heading.
The next heading.
Yeah, I did a separation slide that had the heading on it.
Okay.
But
so I actually kind of noticed that.
Oh, okay.
We got to deal with stupid people like me and say
that was only one thing that I caught, though.
Okay, so the next one I had, and this is, I want to say this in the right way. You talk about succulents outdoors, not necessarily indoors, and you also talk about, mostly until the very end, you talk about in ground versus pots.
Well, yeah, and I should probably preface everything by saying I'm talking landscaping. I changed the title of this presentation to not gardening, but landscaping, because I didn't want to get into pots or indoor plants.
To then cut off any possible questions, you might say that in the beginning. You know, the reason I'm saying it's landscape is because I'm not addressing this and that, even though later on you started talking about plants in pots, that not having the microbes and the more feeding required and so on and so forth. So work it out.
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, if I just introduced the fact that I changed the title of this from gardening to landscaping, because I'm not focusing on pots or indoor plants. I'm focusing on succulents grown in the landscape.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think that it contains it, so people know and they won't necessarily ask. they'll still
ask.
ask. Yeah.
They'll definitely still ask.
Yeah. That's why I don't have the patience for pots. My God, I thought about being a retailer in the beginning and, you know, and selling potted containers and everything. And I go, oh my God, this is time consuming. This is awful.
Really.
Yeah.
The next thing was just a kind of a gut feel that you spend a lot of time on the color chart stuff. Now, I think you can just say, you know, I use a color chart and here's some examples of kind of how I use it. It's almost like you're teaching people how to be a landscaper.
Well, kind of, yeah, I guess.
Well, if that's your intent.
Well, I mean, people like to do their own designs, and I think a lot of people are joining in because they want to do their own gardening. So that's kind of why I gave them those helpful hints. But if I want to delete some slides, I could delete some of those then, perhaps.
Well, minimize it if you want to find more time.
Yeah.
But you also want to promote your business. So don't forget to do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, you know, but I give away a lot of free information to people all the time here. You know, when they come by, when I sell them a $5 plant, I'll talk to them for like a half an hour.
We all know
that's a pretty darn good consultation fee.
I know.
That's a bargain.
That's a deal. That's a bargain.
It is.
Well, unless you're the lady that just shows up and takes your plants, right?
Oh, that lady. Oh boy. Yeah.
You have someone who just takes plants?
Oh, this one woman. I
Oh,
know it's.
how terrible.
I know it was her, and because someone else witnessed her stealing. Well, I caught her taking cuttings of my aeoniums in the front. She goes, I just take a little piece. I go, if everyone took a little piece, there'd be no plants. Yeah. And then one day she took my Echeveria Afterglow right out of the container in the fountain area, lifted it right out and walked away with it. Yeah.
Wow.
That's now
terrible.
that you have your spy cameras.
Now I have a solar panel attached to my camera so that my camera doesn't die. Yeah.
Wow.
That was the whole
All right. Well, anyway, you made a comment about changing something on your spiller slide.
Oh, I got confused. I should call them not spillers, but spillers, or in parentheses, ground cover. And that would help me jog my memory better as to what I'm talking about. Yeah.
That's something we're still recording, so you'll have this to.
Yeah. I'll listen back. Yeah.
And then something about my favorite, I think, and I lost track of what my note was. I think it's very small. It's because it's a long list. It was harder to read. You have too many favorites, I guess.
Yeah, too many favorites. But if they get the slides, they'll be able to read those. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The last one was we already covered it, and that's cover the master gardener in the beginning. Yeah,
I do have a slide for that. I'll go find it and stick it in the beginning.
Yeah. Other than that, that's all. That's kind of what I caught, because I've seen you and Cynthia's presentation before, and I noticed a lot in there, and it's valuable. I really like the presentation. So anyway.
Okay, well, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just wish I could interact more with my audience. It's so hard. That's the hardest part. Gosh,
yeah.
Well, I'll try to joke, and if someone stays live, like if Christiane stays live and starts laughing or something or saying something, then maybe that will help me.
I think you just have to go for it, Janice. Be yourself, and I know it is kind of weird. Not getting that feedback, and even, I guess with this webinar, it's kind of challenging too, because you don't see the attendees' video.
Yes.
Because I know when we've done the classes, some people don't put their video up, and just to have a bunch of little black boxes, is really kind of sad. And it was really hard getting used to that, not having any feedback.
Yeah, I in the beginning I thought, oh great, I'm just going to use my smart TV and I'm going to look at all the participants in the grid mode, right? and I'll be fine because I'll have my audience, but now they're not visible. So now I won't have an audience. Now I know what it feels like for my yoga instructor and my cardio dance instructor, because I never show them me. I never let them see me. Because, you know, half the time, you know, I half dressed, you know, too. And I just wanted to.
Here's a suggestion. You could log in as a part of an audience and have it on another and watch.
That's a lot of processing power that it takes. I wouldn't be able to handle that.
And actually, there might be a little delay in because of the internet. It might be delayed too, and it won't be.
It would compete, especially with that video.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that might be something, Janice, for you to kind of be careful of. Is if you do have problems with your Wi-Fi, you know, keeping everything else, you know, from using Wi-Fi.
I don't really have. I don't have
helpful.
anything else on. No, nothing's on in the house except my phone. That's it.
Yeah, an Ethernet connection is always better than Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I have a long Ethernet cord, so I'll drag it out here and give it a try. I'll experiment with Stephanie, but if it doesn't work with Stephanie, then I'm going to can the whole thing and, you know, make that a separate presentation at some point. And yeah.
Well, if you need me, I can volunteer for myself. If you need another session feedback with us or me, let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you, Joe, for all the time you put into these. Zoom.
You'll get my bill.
One succulent.
Just buy one little plant.
Yeah.
Or one little couple of little cuttings. Yeah.
Cuttings. Yeah.
Anything else you need from us, me?
No, I guess not. How about you, Gay? Did you want to chime in at all?
Yeah, I really like the propagation mentioning, but you know, maybe it could be a resource on the resources page rather than be something you talk about. But that is something that's really
good idea.
Oh,
really,
exactly. You know what? I've got my YouTube link right on that page. And that's all I have to really do. I could just say, you know, for brevity's sake,
there you go.
Here you go. Yeah, you can watch it here. And then maybe just skipping that whole thing might be a good idea.
Or even if you want to do a small little thing, because one thing I was going to say was maybe just, you know, make mention of the different types of propagation to get people interested in seeing your video, because I thought that video was great. I loved it.
Oh, you did. Okay.
So maybe give them a little bit of a little preview of what they can see in the video to hopefully get them to go and watch it. Because I thought the video was great.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And it is a special thing about succulents that they are so easy to propagate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing was the color wheel, which I liked. I mean, I don't know.
I liked it too.
I do too.
On it, maybe, but you know, it just seeing that, and then it's easy to see the contrast, because those are the colors that are so prevalent in nature, right? I mean, it's what nature does. So I liked it.
Okay. Well, we talk a lot more about color wheel when Cynthia and I do it. I mean, we go on and on and on about it. So I did cut it shorter.
Well, if you cut out, or you, as Kelly and Gay are mentioning, your propagation into a slide that then points to a longer.
Yes, I can just briefly introduce, I'll put some notes at the bottom of that slide and just say, here I talk about the 3 techniques for propagation, and by leaf and stem and by pups. And feel free to follow this YouTube link, and or you can Google my name and succulents and you'll find it, or gophers, you'll find me that way too.
Well, what I was going to say is that if you do that,
it's a good joke.
then you're going to have plenty of time to do the longer duration comments on the color wheel, because I think
Yeah,
the
yeah.
color wheel and
I think, and because it is a kind of a separate entity from my discussion, why not just leave it out? I think it's just going to kind of complicate things to have, and I think my talk alone will be, at least without that, it'll probably be at least 45 minutes or more. And
you can get some sleep then.
And you don't want to put people to sleep. Yeah.
No, you can get some sleep. You won't be working on it all night.
Oh, you're right. Yes, I won't, because there are some jobs kind of waiting for me right now. I could be making some money right now. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Anybody else? No? Okay. Okay.
Let us know if you need help.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
We'll see you Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.